Okay, good. Well, thank you everybody for joining me this evening and supporting the IMP. Before I get started, I'd like to just remind anybody who's on the call who doesn't know that there's a series of master classes that are being sponsored by the IMP. And those are going to begin. I'm going to be doing the first one Saturday and Sunday, starting on November the 27th. And there's a whole list of really good international teachers that are going to be on that event. And so if you want to check the detailed schedule, just go on the website. Rick Vermuten is going to be giving a weekend. My wife, Marlene, is going to be doing some programs. Vern Verona from Los Angeles, Simon Brown, Denny Waxman. So it's quite an interesting lineup, and I think that you'll find it very informative. And yeah, well, you'll find it informative, certainly, with that group of people. This talk was scheduled originally for last week on Francisco's birthday. And because it was his birthday, I chose this topic, right? And I'll talk about that a little bit more toward the end. 1 grain, 10,000 grains. This is one of the most famous mottos of macrobiotics. It's not part of the principles and theorems, but it's a motto that George Osawa used very effectively during his lifetime, and it's one that Micho really promoted a lot. And used to actually sign his signature with that little phrase on some occasions. And because it is popular and because it's macrobiotics, there's a lot of different interpretations of what that might mean. And I've heard quite a few. And so I'd like to give you mine and discuss some of the details of that a little bit. It's not only the motto itself, 1 grain, 10,000, but what does that imply for our personal life on a day-to-day basis? And really, that theme, that motto is about, it's a metaphor about how 1 grain can produce endless numbers of grains through germination. So you take a seed and you put it in the ground, and that seed produces many, many grains, and those grains produce many, many more grains. And so it's really about the power of things, small things, the power of small things. It's reminiscent. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the American anthropologist Margaret Mead, but someone was questioning her about fruitless visions, about things that people do that are difficult, that are going counter to society. And she said, never despair about the fact that you're a small group of people, because nothing in history has ever changed aside from a small group of people. It's always a small group of people or one person that ticks over, creates a tipping point, and then things flow from there. And that's a very powerful image, because when you're doing things that are counter to the social flow, it can be very discouraging. Sometimes people get depressed by it. They think, oh my God, I'm doing something, and in my heart and in my mind, I feel that this is a good thing to do, but it doesn't seem like everybody else is agreeing with me. And it's a powerful image to know that throughout the world, probably if you made a list of all of the people who you admire the most, you put all this, the most popular saints and sinners, the men and women who have done great things in the world, you'll find that they were always going against the flow. None of them were involved in endless compromise, but they were involved in endless giving. And that's the thing. So it's important to find in macrobiotics because we have the possibility to nourish our health and to nourish our psyche, and all of that is done for the attainment of our personal potential. Our personal potential. What is the best me? What is the best you? Now, sometimes we're not clear on that. But and sometimes I think we hide from what our best me or our best you is, right? Because it's scary to us, because it's going to take us into a place that we're a little wary of moving into. But it's very important, because that's where that seed lives, that the greatest gifts back can come from. You know, the ancient Greeks called this the daemon. They said that within each person there is, they have imaged it as a tiny person. Right? There is this tiny person who talks to you sometimes, who gives you messages. And that's a part of your psyche. It's a part of your subconscious mind. And when you're imagining great things that you might do, or that you could do, or that you wish you had done, those images are all images that align with that daemon. And it's fascinating, because the church, when Christianity came on the scene, the church interpreted that as demon. Right? Because that's a demon. That's the demon is telling you to do things that are not conventional. And it's a pity, because it is usually those unconventional things, as long as you're not hurting somebody else in the process, that's the seed of our being. And that's what we need to nourish. And if we nourish that, then it makes it possible for us to give more fully of ourselves, because it unleashes our real energy. And I think that most of you probably would agree, or maybe you wouldn't, but I'd like to think that you would, that none of us really live to our full potential. There's always things that we know that we could do, but we don't do because, oh, it's not the right day of the week, or, you know, maybe I'll go to the movies, or maybe I'll go on Facebook and look at pictures of other people's dinner, or whatever it is that amuses us in the moment. But it's only when we nourish that internal seed that we can really give back fully. Now, if we're lucky, we're living a life where we have enough food to eat, where we have a safe place to live, where we have water and air that's clean, hopefully security, and some love in our life, if we're lucky, because most people in the world don't have those things. And this is one of the things that I talked with Micho about many times, and that was that that the sharing that we have to do in macrobiotics, the sharing of a particular kind of collective vision, must be a collective vision for everybody, and not just for people who are already secure in their life, who already have the wherewithal to go out and get good food, and who have a roof over their head, and who have security, and who have love in their life. Because it's one of the things that we see in the world right now is that the problems that we face are oftentimes faced because those of us who do have good things in our life, those good things in our life, become very complacent, and we pull the world into us rather than sharing out into the world. And it's a logical thing, because, you know, we want to protect ourselves. We want to protect ourselves from change. This is a very common part of the human psychology. You know, we want to put on the brakes. As long as we're comfortable, we put on the brakes. So it's very easy to gain our own individual health when there's not danger. You know, when we can live this way, and we don't come up against any conflict. When we're living with the spirit of 1 grain, 10,000 grains, we start asking ourselves questions, right? Like, I don't know, because it's a different time zone, or no, sorry, it's a different culture zone for you in Portugal right now. Many of you probably haven't had your dinner yet, you know, because you eat a little later. But when the food is on the plate, where did that food come from? I mean, who grew it? Who drove the truck to the market, you know? Who cleaned it up and presented it on the shelves? You know, you probably know the person who cooked the food, right? That's good. And so gratitude can be expressed there. But that that inner gratitude that comes from knowing where the source of our energy is moving from, that can give us a great feeling of connectedness. And it can make it more possible for us to give out more fully when we fully appreciate that. You know, quite a few years ago, I lived in Spain for a while, and one time Marlene and I were on a car trip, and we went down the coast of Spain, down toward Gibraltar. And when you get down there in one area, there are these massive, massive greenhouses that go, hundreds of acres of greenhouses that go up into the mountains there. And you know, you look at those and you think, God, those are incredible. You know, that's where a lot of the salad vegetables for Europe come from, is that area in southern Spain and all those greenhouses. And inside those greenhouses are migrants, mostly from Africa. And many of them don't get paid at all. They're captured, right? They're captured, and they stay. And the United Nations even labeled it as an area that's rampant with slavery, food slavery. So if we know that, then it means that the choices that we make, the way that we give back, because we give back our energy every time we buy a service or use a service, we're giving energy back, right? When we know that, it makes us more conscious in the process. And it makes it more possible for us to give back into the world, because we're seeing those areas where giving back is going to be most important. I hope that makes sense to you, because it's part of our conscious development. It's part of what George Osawa called judgment. Judgment is the act of moving out away from our ego, from our small self, out into the world. And as we do that, we have to interact. That means we not only take from that area, for instance, from our culture or from using our ideologies, we give back, we give back, we give back. It's the daily karma of living, living with a grateful heart. When we get up in the morning, are we thankful that we woke up in the morning? You know, Marlene had a consultation here, just finished a little while ago, a couple of hours ago, with a man who's extremely wealthy, you know, very nice man, and his wife, very nice people. And they have millions and millions of dollars, right? They're extravagantly wealthy, and they're not happy. And they're not happy, and they want to live in a grateful way, and they realize that they haven't been living in a grateful way, and that's one of the reasons why they're ill. And that kind of realization doesn't always come to people. Are we grateful for our life, for our health? And if we are, do we give back from that? See, and that's the important part. And that's one of the reasons that I chose this topic for Francisco's birthday, because for me, Chico was one of the few people, really one of the few people that I know in macrobiotics that gave back so fully. And it didn't make any difference where he was giving back, see? You know, if it meant that he had to go into a prison to work with people who were in jail, he went into a prison. If he had to go into a hospital and talk to people and teach, which is a way of giving back, he gave back that way. If it was poor people, he gave back in that way. If there were wealthy people, he gave back in that way. So he was giving constantly in his life. And that's one of the reasons why you know, people have such incredible respect for him. And it's one of the reasons why, if I can say so, that Portuguese, the macrobiotic idea, the idea of macrobiotics is so widely respected in Portugal, was because of Francisco and Eugenia giving back, constantly giving back. So when I talk to people, oftentimes that are involved in teaching or in sharing information, the conversation is about the economics of the relationships. And it's not about the giving back with the trust that if you give back, you will receive. Because it's a two-way street. You have to give out, you have to give out, you give out. And if you give out, things come back to you. That's karma. Right? So we live in a time where there's incredible challenges right now. You know, and those of us who are fortunate enough to have been given a gift, a great gift, which is macrobiotics. Now, I happen to think that macrobiotics is a great gift. Sometimes it's not wrapped up very nicely, but it's a great gift. Right? So it's a great gift that we have. And the only way that we can show appreciation for that is by sharing it. If we're not sharing it, we're not following the motto of 1 grain, 10,000 grains. It's that simple, because we have to give back into the world. Just knowing things is not enough. It's not enough to just know things. We have to know things, and that information that we know, the things that we learn through our own experience, through our own exposure to ideas that other people might give us, inspiration that other people might give us, if we don't translate that back out into the world again, then it stifles the Damien. Stifles the Damien. We can't, we're not nourishing our inner soul in the process. And it's not just catering to the easy way, because, you know, as I said before, we're always going to have to be going against the current. I mean, for many years, the ideas of macrobiotics were ridiculed. Some of you probably have not had that experience to the degree to which some of us who have been macrobiotic for 50 years or, you know, or longer, or 40 years or 30 years even, have experienced that, where people were making a joke about macrobiotics. You know, like, oh, it's a big joke. You know, you eat brown rice, you eat like a monkey, you know, or stuff like that, or things in the common press, or being said that you were doing something that was extremely dangerous. Watch out, because that's dangerous. People die, right? You know, in America in the 1960s, one woman who was a drug addict died while she was eating macrobiotic food, and that became many people die. you may hear that in the news lately. You know, many people are dying, right? When you look at the statistics, well, no, really not so much. So that kind of ridicule. What is it? You know, when people say, "Oh yeah, I would love to do that, but you know, my mother doesn't like it, or my father doesn't like it, or the man across the street doesn't like it, or you know, my doctor doesn't like it, or somebody doesn't like it." You know, and so what? So what? Because if you've been given the gift, you have to keep giving it back. That's the only way that that's the only way that good ideas are nourished in the world, right? Because we can't cater to everyone. Right? You know, when a seed is trying to grow in the ground, if there's a pebble in the way, it figures out a way to go around it. And if it's a really strong seed, right, like for a tree of some kind, it will even break through stone. I lived in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado for 13 years, and in the high country, when you get where the trees start to become very scarce after the forest because of the altitude, you see trees sometimes that have grown right out of the side of a cliff, a granite cliff, and there's a tree growing out of it, right straight out and up, right? There's nothing there. You think, where does that tree get its nourishment? I mean, yes, it gets rain every once in a while, and again, in the winter it snows, and so there's melt that's there, but where is the soil? That seed is so strong that it can drive itself into solid rock, going the little cracks into the rocks, right? And giving back what it gives back its shade, it gives back its beauty, it gives back everything into the world from almost nothing. And that's really pertinent right now, because there's a lot of things that need to be changed, a lot of things that need to be done, don't you think? No, there was all of these leaders got together in Scotland last week and contributed to global warming through the fumes that were coming out of their speeches. There was great amount of talking going on, and great speeches, and movie stars were flying in and giving speeches, and television personalities were flying in and giving speeches, and everybody was saying the same thing. They were saying, this is a really difficult problem. We've got to solve it. And then in the final evening, they all sat down to a steak dinner. Talk about the beauty of irony, right? They fly in a private jet. They walk, and have their pictures taken with different people. And then they eat a steak dinner, and then they fly back out on their private jet. And what was accomplished? Not much. And so if we see that, we have to know that we're the ones that have to take that on. Every individual has to take it on. And if there has ever been a time for the spirit of 1 grain, 10,000 grains, it's right now. Because the source of our very being is being challenged, right? And we need to take care of it. And the only way we can take care of it is by educating other people. Now, that may sound very arrogant to some people and say, well, what do you know that you can share? Well, you know things that are working for you in your life, that are making your life better, that are making your life more healthy, that are reducing the footprint that you have on the planet. You know those things. Those things are inherent in our practice, in our collective practice. And when we hear about things like climate change or food issues or whatever, and we don't address them, and we don't take the opportunity to teach other people what we know, we're passing it up, and the Damien is squashed, right? Our potential is squashed. And that's no good. That's no fun. It's no fun to live like that. Micho used to say, you know, there was a Chinese saying that Micho used to quote, but I've asked Chinese people about this, and evidently none of them ever heard of it. So it's some kind of a saying. Micho may have just made it up, I don't know. But he used to say it was a Chinese saying, and the Chinese saying was, may you live in difficult times, which meant when you live in difficulty, it gives you the opportunity to grow. And so there's never been a better opportunity to grow now, because things are very, very difficult. And not only difficult for us, but they're difficult for the next generation. I really feel that we're shortchanging the next generation. And when I say next generation, I'm talking about your generation. My generation is leaving the building, right? You know, and thank goodness, right? Because we didn't really contribute a hell of a lot. So, but the younger generations, people that are under 30, people that are just being born, that's where this has to happen, because the world is changing so rapidly, you know? So 1 grain, 10,000 grains. So happy birthday, Chico. Great proponent of 1 grain, 10,000 grains, right? So I'm going to open this up for conversation now. So let's hear from some of you. Don't be shy. It's okay, you can talk. I see you. When I was a little boy, long ago, right? When I was a little boy, there used to be a radio show. It was called Big John and Sparky. And it was on Saturday morning, right? So, you know, you could listen to this show, and it was the guy was a ventriloquist. He had a dummy named Sparky. He was Big John and Sparky. And of course, on radio, he could do anything he wanted to because you couldn't see him. So being a ventriloquist on the radio is not really a difficult job. But he had a different voice that he used when he was talking to Sparky. And Sparky would tell kids to talk to the radio, you know. And I imagine when I got a little bit older and I thought about it, there were thousands and thousands of children across America that were answering his questions on the radio. Right? You know, he would say, "What did you do today?" And there would be children all over America that would be saying, "Oh, I went out to the church and Big John, you know, or I did this or I did that," you know. And he used to tell people, oh, he would say Billy, you know, or he would say Martha, or he would say Sonia, you didn't clean your room yesterday. You know, you have to clean your room better and be nicer to your mother, you know. And then you go, oh my God, Big John sees me out of the radio, you know. And so sometimes when I'm on these Zoom calls, I feel like Big John. Just say, come on, kids, talk to the Zoom. Oh dear. What do you think about 1 grain, 10,000 grains? Tell me your impressions.
It's not an easy topic, Bill.
What are you saying?
It's João Lobo speaking.
Yes.
It's not an easy topic, considering Chico and all of his legacy, considering macrobiotic people and all that's been done in the past, considering all the comfort that we have in our lives, and all the things that you have to do to keep them, to keep those issues that make us comfortable. And I can only imagine the uncomfortable situations that you had to go through when you were learning in the beginning. All of the people in Boston, all of the people that would go away from home to study with the Kushis, and we can only imagine that from the comforts of our lives now. And in a way, my mind tends to make me imagine those times for you guys, and makes me wish to live in those days, because you had nothing to lose.
You don't have anything to lose either.
Yeah, we do. We are in the comfort of our comfortable homes, our laptops, our Apple, whatever.
Well, you don't have to
Too
live in a
much comfort,
cave.
you know.
You don't have to live in a cave to give back. You know, I mean, you know, if I take you personally, João, you're a sociable person. You're out in the world. You know, you work in the communications industry. I assume you still work in the communications industry.
I do.
Well, and so you're in the communications industry. It's about communication. So either.
No, it's not. It's about money. It's not about the communication, you know.
You have the,
this is an industry.
You're aware at least of the potential that's there. And even if it's not that, you know, because I don't want to make this like it seem like this was, you know, travails, you know, difficult times in the past. There were difficult times in the past, but everybody was having fun, and we were having fun because we were doing something we believed in. And some people made a ton of money. You know, I'm not against money. I've never been good at making money myself. I've been terrible at it, right? So I can't give any counseling about career choices or anything like that. I'd be a terrible career counselor. But the point is that it's about not being bothered by that. You can transcend all sorts of things if you're not bothered by it. No, there's nothing wrong with living in the material world. No, you know, I'm talking on a big computer and I have a phone here that's made with toxic materials from Africa. And, you know, I have a laptop over there and I have another computer downstairs and I have, you know, all sorts of gadgets and things. And, you know, I'd like to be free of them. But the only way I can be free of them now is by being aware of what they are and making sure that I do something halfway decent with them. Do I do something good with it? Because that's it. Because you can't be perfect. You can't live in that kind of perfection. It's very difficult in this world, you know, and particularly now where there's not great support networks that are available. When I started macrobotics, everybody was living, you know, a lot of the people were all living together in houses. So you didn't have to, you know, you could go home at night and there were all sorts of people around you who supported you. There were people who were doing the cooking every day, you know, so there was good food on the table. You didn't have to worry about that part of it. That's difficult now. There's not community-based, well, there aren't communities that are based there. So the kind of communities that have to be built, maybe some of those communities are going to be digital communities. I don't know, it's not my preference, right? You know, because you can't always, like if I was in a room with the same people that are on the call right now, I'd get some of you to talk because I would grab a hold of your brain and make you talk, right? And it would be fun, but it's hard to do that digitally, right? But you know, so it's just reality. The reality, you know, if I go back to that COP26 thing that happened the other week, right? It's the kind of thing that makes me want to do an old man rant, you know. These guys talking and talking and talking and talking, and see, I've been following that since 1970, before they had COP. When they were in 1970, they had the first Earth Day. 1970. Think of that. 1970. That's how long ago we've known about this. And I've been following that since 1970. Every single big international conference that happens, everybody says exactly the same thing. And what we do is, it's an American phrase, you kick the can down the road, right? And it means you got a problem and you say, okay, well, we'll solve it next year, right? Let's have a party now, and then we'll solve the problem next year, and next year, and next year. And what's now if you look at some of the things that happened at this COP26, you'll see that they made targets for 2030 and 2050. Now, most of the people at that conference, all of those white-haired men in business suits that were sitting in the main conference hall, they're going to be dead by then. They don't care. They don't care. You know, you people, you're not going to be dead by then. God willing, right? You're still going to be alive. You're still going to be kicking. So they're making decisions which are impacting the lives. They're impacting the lives of my children. They're impacting the lives of my grandchildren, right? And they don't care. They really don't care. Because if they really cared, they would make all sorts of regulations on the fossil fuel industry. They would make all sorts of regulations on the agricultural industry. They would just be grown-ups. You know, so this, if you were grown up and your children were out there and they were setting the house on fire, you would be an adult. You would come out and you would say, hey, stop that. And you would take a hose and you would put out the fire. And you would tell them you're going to be disciplined in some way if you keep setting the house on fire, right? But now, no, not if you're an insurance company, right? And you're going to make money when the house burns down. It doesn't make any difference to you. So that's why we have to own that power, because if we don't own it, nobody else is going to own it. for just the reasons that you said, Joao. You know, because the things that we surround ourselves with and that we place value and say these things show how valuable I am. Right? You know, I have this car, I have this television set, I have this apartment. These are the things that I identify with. This is my description of self out here. So it's what we have. And the great psychologist, Erich Fromm, wrote a book once, one of my favorite books. It's a fantastic book. Everybody, I recommend everybody read it. It's called Having or Being. And the distinction that he made is that modern culture, and he wrote the book after World War II and the horrors that were there, said modern culture is based on valuing people according to what they have, not according to what they be. And he said that the culture of having, the culture of, we would call a culture of greed, that is a pathology. It's a pathology, it's an illness. The illness of having, of taking and keeping, taking and keeping. This is the exact opposite of 1 grain, 10,000 grains. As one grain, 10,000 grains says, if I take, I have to give back more than I took. I have to, because if I don't, I'm going to stifle myself. I'm going to drown. There's a African-American song, a spiritual song called "Well, Well, Well," and it says, "The man who stole the water will be thirsty forevermore. The man who stole the water will drown in something else," right? But it's if you take things in, pretty soon they engulf you. I mean, I hate to speak ill of people, but I will. You know, all of these millionaires that want to go to space. Those of you who studied macrobiotics, you know about looking at people and seeing a degree of health. You look at people like Jeff Bezos, you look at people like Elon Musk, you look at zombies like Zuckerberg, you know, you look at people like this. These are empty-eyed people. They're manic. They're empty-eyed. All they know how to do is take. They don't know how to give. If they give, they say, oh, I gave $2 billion. That's like you or me giving $10. Not even that, right? For me, it would be like that. I give $10 to my favorite cause, right? It's like them giving away $1 billion because tomorrow they make it back, right? So that's it. We just have to be givers. Give, give, give. So nobody else going to say anything. Joao, thank you for pitching in.
You're welcome. Always glad.
Okay, folks. Well, I think, Sonia, I think we're finished. Well, I'm finished anyway. Sonia's speaking to me in sign language.
So can I stop the record? Stop recording? Yeah?
Yeah. Did you? I didn't get the notice.
Sorry, can I stop?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.